Hey everybody, Milo here. Wanted to make you a quick video, especially for all you golf swing nerds like myself who like to study the mechanics of how the golf swing works. Because I get a lot of comments on videos I make. I just recently made a couple videos talking about the role our rib cage plays and the bends in our body plays in actually lowering our arms down. Us as golf coaches, we all have our preferences. There's lots of ways to move a golf club. There's no real right or wrong. There are just spectrums. So we have two sides, and there are the pros and cons of moving in those different ways. My preference is to move more like a baseball player, more rotary, more into flexion and rotation, because I find it's the way that the most powerful players move. And it also provides lots of club face stability and control. Okay? So I wanted to show some examples of that. I found a couple cool 3D graphics showing that by Dr. Mark Bull. He used a very well-known PGA Tour player. I won't use his name. I don't have permission to do that. But I have the 3D data showing how he moves. So what we'll find in this clip is that when a player makes a nice wind up to the top in transitions, really good players always transition into more flexion, so down. During the phase where they're flexing into the ground, they're also re-squaring their body.
So here we have a really interesting 3D representation of a player winding into the backswing, and you can really see the trail side working up and back, lead side kind of working down. That's creating some left bend and extension. Now in transition here, you'll see the pelvis kind of translate down and left and open. So the pelvis falls and turns, and at that same time, we see the bounce from left side down to trail side working into bend. It's really clear. You can see that trail side bend right there. It also appears that that trail arm is adducting. However, as we'll see in the coming graphs, it's really not the case. There's not a lot of trail arm adduction. The lead arm is actually still working up slightly in two different ways. It's working both more across the chest and more up in this phase right here.
What's going on during that phase with the arms is really not a whole lot. They're providing structure, so they're not totally loose and sloppy and falling apart, but they're also not providing the initial burst of power. Okay, so during that falling phase, when we're flexing into the ground and squaring up and actually going into some right bend, so our rib cage is also going from extension back into flexion. So we're going to go from, this is flexion, this is extension. At the top of our backswing, we've got full extension. Now, as my pelvis starts to unwind, I actually go into flexion, which creates a lot of that right lateral bend for us. That provides a lot of energy. Our arms in the club during that phase are actually trying to move up. And it's not just one arm. It's both arms are actually trying to keep moving up. But our body, because it's flexing, bending, and rotating, pulls our arms down, what appears to be down. And that's not the only way to do it. There are players, you could look on the PGA Tour, find like Bo Hostler, others who definitely really lower their arms and then turn. But the ones that are most dynamic, you'll actually see this flexing and rotating, and that appears that my trail arm is adducting, but as you'll see in Dr. Bull's data, it's not.
Looking at tour players and really what can we learn and extract from some of the best movers and powerful players on the planet. So on screen here, we have a very established very advanced, very powerful tour player. So just to really shorten the sequence of events, let's go to top of backswing and stop. And the large plot we'll see here, which we expand on, is the pelvis position. And the real plot of interest is the silver plot, the one that kind of goes down and up, which we'll come on to more detail shortly. Minimizing that plot now. If we go to the one at the bottom and expand, these plots really display three movements around the two shoulder joints. So the silver plot is the lead arm or shoulder flexion. The green plot is the trail arm flexion extension. And the blue plot is the lead arm horizontal AB adduction. So abduction, adduction of that lead shoulder humerus relative to that thorax as it moves and rotates in swing.
I find this graph very interesting. When we start to look at the relationship between the movement of the pelvis, how it begins to fall just prior to transition, we see that the arms continue to elevate and adduct in that transition phase because of the inertia produced by the falling of the pelvis and the club still moving up and back. So it's a dynamic system. We also can really clearly see that the elevation of the lead arm is mainly due to the elbow folding, not the elevation of the trail arm. Because you can see the trail arm really doesn't elevate or lower all that much until later on in the golf swing, after P5 when the pelvis begins to rise.
The golf swing's a big system. If we are using our arms more early, we're not going to see our body being as dynamic and falling. So if there's more arms early, you'll probably see the pelvis rising more in that way. Now, my preference is more of the pivot-driven rotary motion, where at contact, our lead arm is actually still close to the shoulder plane. I don't like to see the arms really down, a lot of shoulder extension. I like to see the arms delivered with the pivot, with the flex and rotate. I know there's lots of information out there, and we all have our own points of view on which data is worthwhile and which is not, and we tend to cherry pick. So there are spectrums, but the most dynamic players, there's no arguing, they're using their pivots dynamically. Pressure shifts, they flex. That inertia of the hands and arms going up doesn't want to move. So once they arrive here and they start to push up, that's when you really see the arms firing out. Okay? Hope that clears things up for you.